So a list is basically a variable that can store multiple values. And the good thing about lists in Python is that you can store, it doesn't have to be just one data type. So for example, you could store integers and strings all in the one list. So we're going to have a look at some different things you can do with lists now. First thing we'll do is we'll learn how to create a list. So to create a list you need a variable name. So I'm going to call mine my list. You can call yours anything you like. Be careful not to call yours list. You can see it's come up in purple, so that's a reserved word in Python, so make sure you give it another name. So I'm going to call it my list, and then equals, and you use square brackets. So what I've done there is I've created an empty list. So at the moment there's nothing in it. So if I was to print my list, it's completely empty. Okay. So I'm going to store some values now in my list. So in the square brackets I'm going to put in values separated by commas. So I'm going to put in some integers. Okay, and now if I run my program again, it then prints out my list. Now, a bit like the tutorial when we looked at strings, you can access individual elements from your list, and you do it in the same way as we did with strings. So I'm going to use the square brackets. So inside my print message here I'm going to put in a square bracket, and if I wanted to print the first item from the list, just like with the strings, it would be a 0 because the first position is a 0, it's number 0, not 1. Okay, so if I print my list 0, hopefully it'll print out the number 4 because that is the first item. So run it again, and it's printed out number 4. Okay, and similarly if I wanted to print out the second one, I would put in a 1. Run it, and it prints out the second item from the list. Now, if you want to print out sort of ranges from the list, just like again, like we did with strings, you can give it a start point and an end point. So I could start from position, I'll start from the second position, so I'll start from 1, I'm going to put a colon, and I will put in, I'll put in 3. Okay, so if I run my program, it prints out 2 and 104. Okay, because it starts at 1, which is there, number 2, and up to the 3, so 0, 1, 2, 3, but remember from our strings tutorial it's always 1 less, so it prints out 2 and 104. You could leave out the last number, and then that will just print till the end of the list. So if I run it again, it will print out all the ones from position 1, which is 2, so it should print out 2, 104 and 44. Okay, so that's by taking the endpoint out. Or you could take out the start point, which means it'll just start at the very beginning. It'll start at position 0, and it starts at position 0. Okay, now 4 is the endpoint, so it's printed out the whole list. So that's accessing individual sort of elements or sections from a list. Another thing you can do, which we did with lists, is use the len function to find the length of a list. So what I'll do is inside my print here, I'm going to put len, and then remember it's a function, so it's going to have brackets, and I'm going to put my list. And what that'll do is print out the length of the list. Now the length of the list, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, so the list should be 4. So if we run it, it's 4. So remember, it's not going to be 5 because 0 is the first position. Okay, so we don't go 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Sorry, not 5, 3. I mean, so it's going to be 4, not 3, because 0 is the position, not how many are in there. Okay, so if you want to find out the length of your list, you just use the len function like we did with the strings. There are loads of methods associated with lists, methods that can help you do lots of useful things. So there's loads of different methods. If you want to see more, there's a big list of them in the lists methods sheet that I've given you. So if you want to see more, have a look in there. But I'm going to show a couple of useful ones now. So if I look at my code, I've got print my list to print out the elements from my list. So what I'm going to do before I print out the list, because if I print it out, it just prints them out 4, 2, 104, 44 in the order that I've got them in my list. So one thing I can do is sort my list. So if I use my list and then dot sort, use the sort method. When I print my list now, because I've sorted it, it should print out all sorted. So if I run it, and now 2, 4, 44, 144. So it's sorted it in sort of size order. Okay, so there's one useful method that you could use. Another one you can do is, I'll just edit it by here, is reverse, which, as the name suggests, is going to reverse the elements in the list. So if I run it now has reversed the list and going backwards. Alright, so notice now it's not sorted because I haven't sorted it. Okay, so it's as it was before, so it's printing it out backwards now. It's reversed the list: 44, 104, 2, and then 4. Okay, so that we've done sorting, reversing. Another useful thing you can do is remove. So if I do remove, so my list.remove, then in the brackets I can put in what element I want to remove. So if I wanted to remove the element 104, 104, and I'll run it, and it's removed the element 104 from my list. Okay, and you can do it. You can insert as well if you want to insert into it. There's loads of different methods you can use. Okay, so there's just a couple of useful ones that you might want to use. One last thing I'm going to show you is looping over a list. So I'm going to take away my remove method there. So if you want to loop over all of the elements in a list, now there could be lots of reasons why you want to loop over the elements of a list. Maybe you want to loop over each one and print it out. Maybe you want to loop over all of them and perform some kind of calculation on them, or some kind of comparison. And whatever the reason, looping over a list is a really useful thing to be able to do. So I'm going to set up a loop now. I'm going to use a for loop. I'm going to say for item in my list. So basically what I'm saying by here is for every item in my list, so for each of these items in here, and then underneath, obviously indented, this is where I say what I want to do with each item. So just to start off with, we'll do a simple one, so do print. And then item. Remember, we don't want to print my list, otherwise that will print my list every time. We want to print the item from the list. Okay, so I'll take that one away, and what we should get when we print it out is each item printed out individually from the list. So we'll run it, and then we got each item printed out.